The past participle, also called the perfect or passive participle, takes on the ed-en form and is used to express a verb's outcome in one way or another. While the root words are verbs, past participles can serve as several different parts of speech and are applied to a wide range of grammatical topics. Here are 10 things to know about the past participle form. 1. The past form of most verbs ends with ed, though irregular verbs take on different forms. The past participle form is identical to the past form for all regular verbs and some irregular verbs. Other irregular verbs, however, might have a different form for past participle, such as an en ending. You can look up irregular verbs lists or charts to see how a verb changes from its base form to past participle. 2. There are only about 200 irregular verbs, which isn't very much. But some of these are the most commonly used verbs in the English language, words like have, make, and go, so we write and speak them all the time. 3. The past participle form is perhaps best known for its role in perfect tenses, which express the outcome of an earlier verb by focusing on its results, stating an experience, or establishing a status. Since perfect tenses can be past, present, or future, the term past participle is a bit misleading, which is why perfect participle is a more appropriate name when applied to tenses. 4. In perfect tenses, the verb that takes on the perfect participle form is whichever verb follows the auxiliary have, or has, or had. This is usually the main verb, but not always. For example, in perfect continuous tenses, the verb that follows have is be, which takes on the perfect participle form of been. Incidentally, the same is true for perfect tenses in the passive voice. 5. Speaking of passive voice, the main verb of a passive sentence always takes on this participle form. Again, the term can be misleading since the verb string isn't necessarily past and not necessarily perfect, so you may choose to call it the passive participle in these contexts. The term you go with should provide clarity for the situation, but rest assured that past, perfect, and passive participle is all the same thing. 6. The passive participle doesn't always serve as a verb. It can also be a modifier. Passive adjectives are words that look like verbs with the ed or en ending, but they might be placed just before a noun to modify it. Or they might come after a linking verb like get, be, or seems, in which they serve as predicate adjectives, modifying the subject noun. Passive adjectives can be used just like any other adjectives. 7. Participial phrases are sets of words that begin with participles and serve as adjectives or adverbs. In fact, they act very much like prepositional phrases, modifying nouns, verbs, adjectives, or even entire clauses, and you can find them almost anywhere in a sentence. The difference, of course, is that these start with a participle instead of a preposition. 8. Whether it's used in passive voice, as a passive adjective, or to start a participial phrase, the passive participle conveys how the noun or other word it's modifying, or even the entire situation that the sentence expresses, is affected by some action or state. That effect might be immediate, direct, or intentional, or it could be indirect or accidental. The active participle, on the other hand, focuses on the event of the verb that forms its root, or perhaps on the source of that verb. But for passive participle, it's the outcome that matters. 9. Almost all irregular verbs are one syllable only in their base form, except for compound words and verbs with prefixes. For example, forgive, broadcast, and understand make the same changes to their form that give, cast, and stand do. If you can't find mistake in an irregular verbs list, look up take instead. 10. It's possible for the same base verb to have multiple past participle forms, and there are 3 reasons for this. A. Past participles change over time. In fact, there used to be more irregular verbs 1,000 years ago, but many of them have since transitioned to the regular ed ending. Some of the less commonly used irregulars are even now gradually becoming regular. Whereas shone, lit, and wed were the norm in the past, shined, lighted, and wedded look to be standard in the future. B. Past participles can vary from region to region. Much of the UK uses slept, dwelt, learnt, and a handful of others with a T ending, while those same words in the US have the regular ed ending. For another example, the past participle of bring is most commonly brought. However, in some regions, even within the same country, you might hear brung, or possibly broughten. C. It's pretty rare, but the passive participle occasionally takes on a different form when used as an adjective than it does as a verb. For example, melted and sunk are suitable perfect tense verbs, but molten and sunken are more likely to be used as adjectives. Similarly, a few regular verbs can have different pronunciations, as with blessed for verbs but blessed for adjectives. This change is more likely when the adjective comes before the noun it modifies, and it may or may not apply to passive voice. Regardless of the reason for variations of past participle, it's probably best to go with whichever form is used by the English speakers you interact with. Language is, after all, molded by the people who use it. This has been 10 Things to Know about Past Participle.